Hey everybody, hey peeps, thanks for checking out my latest video. I'm going to focus on DraftKings Rainmakers here, and I want to talk about a strategy that I think is probably the best one going forward, especially if you're setting up new lineups or looking to allocate or reallocate funds in it. The right balance of quality versus quantity, because this is a card game. And you can own as many cards as you want. So you can, that's basically what comes into play. I'll explain along as I go, but you can see the two teeth there. So two are better than one, two teeth. Real quick, I'm going to go over the weekend slate more in depth in another video, but just real quick, wanted to tell you we got buys this week for 4 teams: Detroit, Vegas, Tennessee, and Houston. Then you got the Thursday night game, Washington at the Chicago, Dallas at Philly, and Denver at the Chargers on Thursday, Sunday, Monday. If you do a deep roster, you can play players from these, and if you have spots, you can substitute them in for any of the games after the Thursday game. Of course, the showdowns too on each of those. All right, so this is pretty clearly right now as we speak through week 5 of the NFL season. This is the best lineup basically in terms of how many points per game they are scoring. This does not mean it's the projected best lineup going forward, but this is the best one right now. It's Kupp as your superstar, Hurts, Chubb, Diggs, and Barkley. This does leave out Josh Allen and Lamar, who also have been sort of above the pack. But Kupp is enough above the pack on his points per game that this is actually the best lineup because Hurts has come within reach of those other quarterbacks. So it's Hurts, Kupp, Diggs, and Barkley. This is what this costs on each of these levels, and I checked the prices today, I believe. And by the way, the prices are not dropping over the last few days. And on the higher end, some of them are rising. So they're fairly stable, I would say. One thing to mention is I feel like people are overselling the ones that are on buys in general. And of course, they always buy the ones that are in showdowns as the game approaches. But you're only going to lose one game on these, and everybody's going to have a buy going forward. So you're losing one game, which is one out of 12 left for each team. So that's like 8%, but something like that. 1/12 is all you're going to lose on that. So you can look at if you see a bargain on those teams, I think you can snap one up. I have from one of those teams already. Actually, 2 of those teams now that I think about it, because I've been accumulating some rares. Okay, so that lineup, if you just bought all of them, is 121, 575, about 4,800, a little under 20,000, and a little about 61,000. Of course, there is no Chubb Rainmaker even currently for sale. Because Kupp is a superstar, you need to own him at each level that you want to play at. So on Elite, you do need to own that one. You can't go down a level. But you could go down a level on these others, on one of these other players. So what I did here was calculate if you did go down a level or 2 levels on these, or 2 cards on these, because you only need 2 legendary and 3 elite and 2 Rainmaker and 3 legendary. So that would be like 121, 446, basically 3,800, 9,700, and about 35,000. So that's sort of like the cheapest version of the chalk lineup right now, the best performing lineup. And that's been scoring 129 points a week if you average out just the points per game. And here, of course, is the multiplier. So you can see Elite is, again, the most expensive because that's got the $100,000 first prize in it. So if like, for example, here it would be getting rid of the Barkley and buying the $100 rare Barkley instead of the $1,100 one. So that takes your cost down to $1,000. And the core, of course, would be the same. So what I have determined with the balance of quantity and quality probably the best way to go, and it just seems to work out well, is to stick to high tier players, but go away from the most expensive ones. And of course, it's going to be your choice of which ones to go with, but I'll show you a variety of scenarios, teams here, and then just some overall lists of players to consider. But just as an example, so that chalk lineup on core level costs $121. You could get both of these lineups for combined $124 currently. You could also get a Cup and throw it in there, or a Josh Allen, or a Kelsey, or a Hurts, but they are actually more than they're more expensive. So you could get a Lamar, a Fournette, Tyreek Hill, and Evans, and an Andrews, so that actually pairs up, plus a Murray, Aaron Jones, Jefferson, Hollywood Brown, and a Kamara. These lineups are currently point per game 107 and 96.5. That would cost 66. That would cost 58. So that's $124, basically identical. Now, that is scoring less than that, but the whole point is you're getting 10 players versus 5. So you could enter 2 lineups with that versus 1 every week. Not to mention you have depth at positions if somebody gets injured, because injuries happen quite often in the NFL. We've already seen Diggs a little banged up. We've seen Cup almost looked a little banged up last game. And just as you know, guys will sit out a little more often nowadays than they used to in the past, and if they get a concussion or whatever. So in my view, this basic strategy is the way to go. Because now on the core level, it's going to vary on the different levels. But on the core level, because these are so low priced, I could almost pick a lot of the highest scoring players just as is, and it's still cheaper. Okay? So like these are a lot of the guys who've put up highest per game numbers so far this year. And there you're getting Jefferson as your superstar and Jackson there. And again, I mentioned there's even a couple of stacks on that. And you can swap out different players that you may like or may not like on these lists, okay? So using the same strategy on the rare level, this is an example. So the chalk lineup, 129 points. When you swap in a core, it costs about $450 to get the top scoring rare lineup with just 5 players. Well, you can get these 2 lineups and swap in a Barkley and a Diggs, for example, for $400. So that's actually $50 cheaper. And you could stick in that. So that means you could buy another $50 player as well, or 2 $25 ones. But there's a lot of good rares around $50, as a matter of fact. And these are where the current prices are. Like I said, they are changing. There was a Murray rare for 62 yesterday that I wanted to buy, and it's gone. I feel like it was 62, and it's a lot higher than that now. So in this example, we've got Herbert, Mike Williams stack, Jacobs, Lockett, and Pierce running back. And you can swap in Barkley for Pierce if you want to get a core in there. For just as an example, Burrow, Kamara, Devontae Adams, Pittman, and Montgomery. So I tried to use sort of bigger names here because these are some guys that people might not like as much. But you could also swap in the Diggs here for the Pittman, the Montgomery, etc., the Lockett. And this is about 99. Both these are 99-point scoring totals. And just because these guys are scoring this much more above everybody else, it's easy to envision that's going to continue, but there may not necessarily be as much separation, especially when you're getting to the upper levels. Cup, tends to score above everybody else. And then there's, a group of quarterbacks at the top, and then a kind of a secondary group of quarterbacks, and then there's various running backs and various wide receivers. So even though it seems like that's a lot of points, number one, you're getting 10 players, including 2 of the best ones. And you really, like the gap seems bigger than it probably is, especially on a week-to-week basis. And of course, you can mix and match then. And if a guy is out with a bye, you have a replacement type thing. If you did want to add the cup, that one's $95, just to show you on a relative basis how much more we're starting to get into that there. So then we go to the elite, which is the biggest contest. And you know, I'm only on the rare level now. I'm using some of my winnings from Rainmakers and DFS and buying some rares. But the elite's still beyond what I can put into it, or I want to put into it. But again, it has a $100,000 first prize, so and there's not that many entries. There's not that many cards available of each guy. You know, 200-300 Murrays or something like that. So a 200-300 of the elite level. So, but double check the amount. So the point being is, you know, there's a limited number of these, and so they have value and they hold value with the contest guarantee on that level. So here's an example. You could get a Lamar, Aaron Jones, Evan, Pittman, and the Chubb. So Chubb's straight off the top one. You could sub in the Hurts for the Lamar, and that's like a $2,100 lineup. That scores 102 points. Then you could get a Murray, an Eckler, a Metcalf, a Cooper, and a Pierce. And again, there's a lot of players to choose from in these categories, some more than others, depending on where you want to go. You could swap in the Barkley for a Pierce, and you're looking at $1,800 for a 98.5 point lineup. That adds up to $3,905, and the current chalk lineup with the rare is $3,800. Again, these are going to be higher if you're going all 5 elites or all 5 rares. I'm talking about the 4-1, where your superstar does have to be at the level that you're playing at. So there, it's a little bit more. If you were interested in the cup at that level, it's $940. And again, you can look up the other ones are very expensive compared to the others. That's why with the Hurts, Barkley, Chubb, and Diggs, you can go a level down. But with Allen, Lamar Jackson, you can't. Cup, you can't because they're superstars. And they are going to be also Diggs is a guy you can go a lower level down. But also they've mentioned that I believe week 9 they're going to be adjusting the superstars. And basically what it sounded like to me is they're going to be adding players as superstars. And they may take a few away like Najee Harris and a couple others that are really underperforming. But it sounds to me like they want to add them, which is going to be interesting for the game and make the game more tricky and maybe shake things up, which is cool. But the guys that probably would add would be Diggs, Chubb, and Hurts would be like the 3 that come to mind, depending on where they're at that point. And Barkley over Chubb. So that's 3, 1 from each position. I could see them doing that, and that'll stimulate the marketplace as well. But that's another advantage to having multiple players. And so theoretically, you could have these 2 lineups going every week, disregarding buys. Versus the 1 lineup. This is, I think, the sweet spot, so to speak, between quality and quantity. I've tended to buy too much quantity and sold some of my quality, a lot of my highest level quality. Well, I think the balance is somewhere around here. You can determine for yourself. You could even go down 3 lineups deep, type of thing. But this is getting a lot of really guys that can really put up points. But not the ones that are currently the top tippy top, and because they're so jacked up in price. That's really the point of this. So just showing you some of the players that you could consider. On the quarterbacks, and these are the rare and elite prices I captured from today, and again, prices are not plummeting. As a matter of fact, some of these have gone up. Some have gone a little down, but they're not, you know, there's not a lot of selling going on right now, which is good, but it's hard if you're wanting to buy. The Allen, Jackson, and Mahomes are generally expensive on a real dollar basis. Again, I know some of you $20 doesn't mean that much, let's say, or 30, but when you're really calculating the value and you're buying, then so I think the quarterbacks. I think this is the group: Allen, Jackson, Mahomes, Burrow, Smith, Herbert, Murray, and Allen. Possibly Brady, but I think this is the group that can come in. I'm sorry, not Smith. Geno Smith is actually high up because he's a backup, so there's not as many of his cards. I'm sorry, take him out. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks. I think the quarterbacks, you sort of have to go the top tier, that out of that 7. And then the Hurts you can add in on the core and rare because he's not a superstar at $32 and $140 for the rare. So the rare would go with the elite, the core would go with the rare. And I sort of picked the ones I thought were the best deal out of the group. And then if it was a superstar, I picked another one. So I would say the Herbert at 58 and the Burrow at 73. Possibly the Jackson at 100. The Murray was like I said, the Murray was in the 60s yesterday, and I should have bought that. That would have been the best deal. On the elite level, I would say the Murray at 610, and probably the Jackson at 870. A lot of people see the Mahomes are getting up to the same price, and Allen's a lot more. Again, we're looking for value for money. The other guys, Brady, Carr, Rodgers, Cousins, Goff, and Wentz. I sort of did some calculations, basically based on half what the guy has done this year already and half what their rest of the year projections are, and sort of just grouped tiers that way. And I added a couple here and there, big names who haven't played much, but this would sort of be the group. And there's definitely other quarterbacks you could put in there. Wilson, I can't even think right now. Lawrence, Stafford, et cetera, and like Goff and Wentz is actually like the 5th highest scoring quarterback, I want to say, or 6th. Now he's banged up, and his numbers have been very up and down, but he's putting up a lot of points. But in general, I would look to go on the higher ones, especially as you're going up level in the contest. Like I said, that top 7 if possible. Now you go on to the running backs. There's about 20 on here. The Barkley and Chubb are not on here because they're too expensive. So the Barkley at the core is 24. The Chubb at the core is 18. The rare 182 to add them in. So I'm sorry, and these are sorted by the elite prices. Okay. So here, there's really a lot of uncertainty in my view. I suppose you could kind of say beyond Taylor, McCaffrey, Henry, and Eckler and Cook. You could say Fournette, Kamara, Mixon maybe as the next tier. With Swift, there's uncertainty. They're off this week, and he has an injury. He may be in that tier. Aaron Jones may easily be in that tier. Then you got like Stevenson. He's expensive because I believe he was a backup. Hall is expensive because he's a rookie. Walker is a rookie. Jacobs, Montgomery, Pierce, rookie. Hilaire, Sanders, and Devontae Harris. I'm sorry, Najee Harris, who is a superstar. This is where judgment calls have to come in, and I've debated a lot with these on which ones to get. These I've really been looking for the bargains in this area because, like I said, I'm doing rares. So the running backs, it's going to depend on what superstars you have. Okay, like Taylor and Eckler are actually projected the highest by one site for the rest of the season, but you could easily see Taylor making a comeback. Sorry, McCaffrey and Eckler. You could see Henry doing it. You could see Taylor. There's just uncertainty here. Mixon seemed to be one of the steadiest guys, and he hasn't really had a great year so far. How much playing time is Hall going to get? How good are Hall and Walker and Pierce going to continue to be? Is Jacobs going to continue to be way overperforming? Is Harris going to have a comeback type of thing? So I picked the best value here is McCaffrey at 49. I think even with the quarterback out, they're probably even going to use him more. And, people are so shy of him because of injuries, but he's put up 20 fantasy points the last 2 games. And then I picked Jacobs. Jacobs off this week. He's putting up great numbers. He looks really good. They got a pretty high-scoring offense and not a very good defense. But there's others on here. That's on the rare level. On the elite level, I said the Eckler was the best deal because it's $50 cheaper than these. Here, the Eckler and the McCaffrey are the same. Henry's a little cheaper. And there's a variety. Depends on really who you like. And that's why having 2, though, is much more reassuring to me because a running back can go down. They can go down. We've already seen it happen on Denver, Atlanta, and other teams. We've seen Swift out. We've seen Seattle's running back go down. So having 2 of these is so much more peace of mind, or 4, actually. I'm sorry. If you're doing 2 lineups, you may end up with 4 of them versus 2, versus just having Barkley and Chubb, for example. Here I picked Eckler as the best deal, and then I picked Aaron Jones. It's sort of a tough call. But at 400, and if you sort of put him in this group with these guys, Green Bay seems like they're going to continue to run a lot this year. Then he's a bit cheaper. Swift could also be really good depending on his health. Then on to the wide receivers and tight ends. Here I think I went down about 30 deep. This is a little harder as well. This one's hard as well. So the Diggs isn't on here. So the core on him would be 29. The rare is 158. So if you wanted to add the rare to your elite, you'd buy that at 158. If you wanted to add the core to your rare lineup, you could buy it for 29. So Kelsey's super jacked up because of unless you're building a deep roster, I would not touch that. But if you are building a deep roster, then you do want to look at Kelsey and Andrews. But Andrews is much cheaper. He's like half the price. So I would go for the Andrews personally. But this is the kind where you would put him with like the Diggs as like buy a level below. Unfortunately, with the Allen, you can't do that, or the Mahomes, or these running backs, obviously. And again, grouped by prices, it's Hill, A.J. Brown, St. Brown, Jefferson, Andrews, Evans, Chase, Hollywood Brown, Waddle, Mike Williams, Adams, Lockett, Sutton, Mike Thomas, Pittman, Myers, Debo, Olave, Lamb, Cooper, Metcalf, Kirk, Gabe Davis, Higgins, Devontae Smith, Curtis Samuel, Lazard, Keenan Allen, Godwin, and Deontay Johnson. These 3 guys have done nothing this year, and 2 of them have been injured, and so they technically wouldn't even qualify for this list. But they're pretty big names with that can do something still. So I left them on here. As far as scoring wise, Jefferson's really like the step above right now. He's pretty close to Cup for a lot less money. So that's a one to consider, especially on this level. On the elite, you can build him as your superstar. That's why he was on my elite one, I believe. Let's see. No, I actually picked Eckler. But you can do it different ways. And again, trying to come within this budget of what you spend on the other one. But the Jefferson actually was my best. I would say the pick of all the elites, being that he's puts up mad numbers, he has, and he's cheaper than these others because he's a superstar. But remember, on the elite superstar, you can use it in that contest. Of the rest of them, it's a very tough call. I ended up saying Evans at 520. There's a lot of them on here. I don't have the groupings by sort of tiers on this. You have to somewhat determine that yourself. A lot of people sort of have Hill, A.J. Brown, St. Brown, depending on health, Jefferson, Evans, Chase, somewhat in this order. But I can tell you, I'm Pittman up here a little bit. But, for example, like Lockett's been putting up good numbers and Metcalf every week, and they're still very cheap. There's a lot of guys like that. I mean, there's multiple guys like that. So on here, I picked the best deal. And now Hollywood Brown's been putting up good numbers and pairs good with Murray, but DeAndre Hopkins is coming back. Now, we don't know how much impact he'll have, and he isn't getting any younger. So we'll see. But if he wasn't coming back, that would be like a big steal. Then the Waddle and Hill, you got the quarterback issues, but they're so talented. Mike Williams didn't put up numbers with Herbert, but you got Keenan Allen potentially. Cortland Sutton, you have. So my point is sort of there's issues. There's questions on so many players in the NFL. With him, you got Russell Wilson. Is he banged up? And he hasn't played. So that's why it is good to have 2 lineups for the price of one, all filled with good players, because then you're going to have 4 wide receivers, 4 running backs, or it depends on how you combine it, and 2 quarterbacks. Again, and you can have one from the lower levels that is one of the top studs. Mike Thomas has a lot of high projections still, but been hurt. Jacoby Myers has been putting up really good numbers, and he's coming back even after being banged up. And he's a guy that a lot of people hate in fantasy because he always used to put up. He would theoretically look good, but he wouldn't get the touchdowns. But he's actually putting up good numbers so far this year. So it might be a kind of thing with perceptions where people. Same thing with Josh Jacobs. People don't perceive him as how he's actually playing now. Olave banged up a little bit. Cooper, good. Metcalf, good. Kirk, Camby, Gabe Davis, Higgins. So there's a lot of guys on here that it sort of depends on how you break it down and who you like and what how concerned you are about price. If you're like, well, I don't care about paying $20 more on a rare, that's fine. You can get a better player, but on paper, but that's 40% higher if you look at a percent basis. Or same thing here, if you're paying $100 more, that's 25% higher. It depends on your perception of value and how much you care about value, how much you're wanting to spend on the level. Again, so if you just bought the straight out like elite lineup, it'd be like $3,800, and you could buy these 2 combined for like $3,900. So the pick I picked on here was this Adams at 41. I might have bought it out. Let me see. Did I buy that? I haven't bought that yet. But that would be the one I would go for. Again, it can't be used on the elite, but if you're going for the rares, when you compare them to Chase, Jefferson, some of the other tip-top guys, Evans, A.J. Brown, I mean, that's a steal. He is off this week. Excuse me. And then the other one, it's very tough choice. There's a lot of ones. I picked the Pittman at 40. After the first week, he was ranked as one of the top wide receivers, and now he's plummeted, and et cetera, et cetera. And but Indy's back. They're not off this week, right? Yeah, they're playing this week. And same thing with Taylor to some degree. On the elites, I picked the Jefferson and the Evans. All right, so I know I rambled on a bit here, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. I think the way to go is to get 2 lineups instead of the top lineup, but still try to get really good lineups and only spend about as much as you would have on the one lineup. I think that's the way to go for the reasons I explained. I think that's a good balance of quality and quantity, getting more players in the mix, and not trying to sacrifice too much of what you consider to be guys that can put up good totals. All right, thanks for listening, and thanks for commenting, viewing, and liking. And subscribing. All right, guys, have a good one. I'll do a further video on more on this slate coming up this week. Have a good one.